Innovation is in our veins. Soon the whole world will know our names. Sharing our knowledge and freedom reign. We here for the people, you know it's our way. Setting foundations is part of the dream. It doesn't matter if you're new to the game. Listen up now, cause we all gon' say, elevate, 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 higher, elevate, 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 higher. We gon' rise up, we all gon' shine. Work through adversity, stay on the grind. Elevate, elevate, this is our time. Elevate, elevate.
Welcome to the Elevate Podcast, everyone. It's so great to have you all on one more time. It's your boy Josh.
And Reg.
And we're grateful to be back on with you yet again. It's been a week off and you're feeling good. I'm looking darker now. I've been spending some time at the cottage. I'm feeling good. You boys ready to go. We got some stuff to get into tonight, including virtual care, talking about being on a citizens panel, and all the fun plans that are in the talks here for the province of Nova Scotia, but as well as healthcare across the nation. We're getting into it tonight. We're excited.
Yeah, and we also have a few little treats coming out of Alberta. Ooh. So a few things that, because we don't want to stray away too far from like the federal stuff, because it's too damn interesting to not talk about. But just kind of like taking it from a lens of, here's what's happening, here's what you need to know to be informed, and then also kind of like, what do we do with this?
Absolutely. Before we get into that, we got some stuff to talk about. Your boy needs an Elevate counseling session, you know what I'm saying? So yesterday was, I guess tonight we're recording on a Monday night. Yesterday was Sunday night, was our championship game for my boys that I'm coaching and female goaltender. And it was, we were expected to win. We should have trounced them.
Oh no.
And we came in with their heads a little too big and we got humbled. It was rough. And it was an interesting one though. It was rough because there was talks like, the team that we're playing against, even like they had like one really good weapon, two decent ones. And like all like the decent players were like apparently out on injury. And so like that rumor was circulating amongst our team. And so these guys kind of win and like, okay, we'll see. Let's see what happens.
So just for context, this is your lacrosse that you're coaching.
Yeah, good context. Yeah. So people who don't know, I've been coaching lacrosse, 16-year-olds for the past 3 months. And we finally got to the climax of what we've been working for so long. 3 months. Feels like an eternity, I'm not going to lie. Mm-hmm. Mid-April. So we got to that point last night. We have a really good team. We've been smoking people. It's been awesome. Praise God, you know what I'm saying? and we get to that game. Rumors are circulating. We go up like 3-0, 4-0 early. All the boys start feeling themselves like, yeah. And then they stop doing the things that got us there all of a sudden. And before you know it, beginning of the third, it's tied 5-5. And they feel the game slipping away and they start getting desperate.
Oh no.
No. They stop working as a team. They start trying to beat everybody by themselves. And their goalie, credit to him, he played a phenomenal game and he just shut the door on us and they ended up winning 7-5 to finish it off. So It was rough. And it's one of those moments where, when you're working with teens at that point, if you remember being a teenager and you remember doing something big that you really cared about, that thing at that moment is the only thing that matters in your world. And it's your whole world. And to lose it is absolutely heartbreaking. And these are things that I try to remind myself of. And so we had to stand there, watch them get their trophy, raise it up, get their stupid little hats on. And the big thing I really wanted to teach these kids was losing with grace is hard, especially when you're losing to a team and an association who isn't very classy, and they're kind of trashy, if I'm being honest. So to see them rub it in your face, and you still have to like hold your chin up high, take it for what it is, and you still got to tip your hat to the better team at that day. So I go into the change room, and these kids, it was so quiet. These kids were so depressed. And so I'm trying to detach emotionally as much as I can at that point, just so I can be there for them and be that voice to encourage them moving forward, whatever. And I got home that night, and then it hit me. I was like, bro, how did we lose that freaking game, bro? Like, holy jumping. So, because I think it got to the point for me where I love the game. Game's fun. I love winning. But I care a lot more about helping kids grow in their character.
Well, that's the thing about sports, right? Is it's about building the character and the qualities that will take you beyond the game. Because like when you think about the fact that like these kids are probably not going to play in the NNL or NLL, like, you know what I mean? Like that's just not where they're going. But what they can take from these learning experiences, whether that's like healthy living, whether that's playing as a team or losing with grace, like those are the things that are going to carry forward. And so that's what we have to focus on, right? And then also about excelling, pushing yourself, doing your best, and facing adversity. So
totally. I think a big thing too, I think that's why part of the reason I got so down is because of that reason was, when you see the kids that you've been working with for me the past 2 years, and you just see them so down in the dumps, you so badly want to take that pain away. You want to take it away at that moment. But they need to learn through it, right? But you get home that night and you start thinking, it's like, man, what could have I done as a coach that would have helped them not feel that way that day? What did I mess up on? What did I miss? And those are the things that I started circulating in my mind. And it was a rough day today, I'll be honest. I was like really sad. Yeah. It was a tough one today. But when I was able to detach from it being a 15-year-old sport, that's when I started getting down the dumps. I was like, yeah, it's just a game, whatever. But then I'm like, man, but I have a responsibility to helping these kids grow, and seeing them in pain it really hurt. But
it's like you said, though, they have to feel that. They have to feel that failure and then grow from it, because like we don't learn from our wins, I'd say, as much or as deeply as we do from our failings. And there's been so much stuff that I've been consuming actually on the topic of failure, on the topic of growth. And it's always about the come up story. It's always about, you were sky high, then you fell flat on your face, and then you came back even stronger. And I think that maybe like that's what you bring to them, is that, we thought we were on top of the world. We thought we were leading everybody, and we were for a bit. And we let that get to our heads, and we let that play into our psyche. So next time going forward, we need to come into this with humility. We need to say, like, we're not the very best, and there is always more that we can do. And so, and then again, highlighting that piece about like when we stopped playing as a team, that's when we lost the game. Like we may have been losing because of our attitude, but when we stopped working together, that's when we all lost. And I think like even just to play that into like the whole topic of the night, like that's the truth of it, is that when we stop working together as a community, as a team, and together, that's when we lose. So,
yep. No matter what the messaging is, no matter what the outside words are, got us to keep working together. 100%. Can't agree with that anymore. But you had an amazing, interesting experience. We're talking about Maple. We're talking about just virtual healthcare. You got to be in a room with some interesting people this past week, and I know you're dying to share about it.
I am. I kept this all away from you because I wanted to give it to you raw on the podcast, so that get your feedback and get your emotions there live for everybody joining us. And so what it was is that, so across Canada, they're doing something called the Our Care Priorities Panel. And so it's really focused on primary care providers. So that's your family doctors, that's your nurse practitioners, that's the people you go see first, your first entry into healthcare. And sometimes they kind of consider the emergency department in that, although that's not really what it's supposed to be, but it's kind of in that same realm. And so what we had the opportunity to listen to, I think it was 16 different highly intelligent, educated, knowledgeable individuals in this system. So people who were in the head of Maple, which is the online virtual care platform that's a paid for service, a private healthcare service. And we got to hear from people in Nova Scotia Health, Department of Health and Wellness, which is the provincial body for health, and Nova Scotia Health Authority, or Nova Scotia Health, sorry. They are the ones that govern all the hospitals across our province. So just really, really incredible people, researchers, family doctors themselves from different parts of the province, the head of Doctors Nova Scotia, people from the pharmacy side of things. So I'm trying to remember exactly what her title was, but she basically headed up all the pharmacies and represented the pharmacists' interests. And then kind of lastly, the individual responsible for the rolling out of the one patient, one record. So what that means is that anytime you go see a healthcare provider, whether that's a family doc, a physiotherapist, a pharmacist, any person that's going to be looking at your health, that all that information is saved in one place. Because right now it's not. It's like breadcrumbs everywhere. And you go to one doctor or one outpatient, and they're like, "So, where have you been? And who did you see?" And it's on the patient then to kind of like come up with that information, or the doctor is going to do their best to try and like hunt down those other providers and try and figure out, okay, so what medications are you on? And, you know, what did this specialist say? And it's just, it's a burden. And so it's like really, really causing a huge problem for healthcare delivery and for healthcare planning. So like if you are a type 1 diabetic and you go see a specialist, and then you're also getting lab work done, and then your family doctor retires and you have to get a new one. And like all of these systems don't talk to each other, and it's really, really painful. So got to hear from the lady that's running that show. And so that was super interesting. And so I should say that I was one of 34 members from across Nova Scotia that got to be in this space. So we were appointed into this panel, and it was a really cool experience because it was completely representative of the province. I'd say like you had people from all across the province, people of all different age groups, genders, ethnicities, economic and economic backgrounds. Like there was one lady who very openly said, she's like, "I'm on the system." She's like, "I use social assistance, and my home is subsidized and my internet is subsidized, and sometimes I go without meals." And then you also had a guy who was there who's like, "So I was the CEO of my own engineering firm that pulled in X number of $1 million a year, and I'm living very comfortably." So
Interesting.
yeah, so you had a good cross section of the public. And so, and I'm just trying to even think like even the positions, like people who were teachers. One guy was a retired cop of 30 years. There were some people who were students, and then and then a couple of people who were unemployed too. So it was really a good mix. They did a really, really good job making sure that this was representative of our province.
Nice. I think that's really fantastic. And we always love to hear the different voices that are coming together on this. But I'm curious, how did they select? You said it was 24 of you?
It was 34 of us. Yeah. So they had put out a call and people applied, and then they actually went through the applications and selected based on like all these different metrics. So basically like, are we representing like the African Nova Scotian community? Are we representing the Indigenous community? Are we representing young people? Are we representing like the elderly? So they tried to like, and then again, like I said, the socioeconomic factors too. So they tried to do that. And then it was also gender balanced too. So they had 17 male participants and 17 female participants too. So they tried to keep it as representative and equal as possible, which was really cool. What you thinking?
I'm just processing right now. Yeah, I think, first when you're talking about, you know, it was an equal to a diverse group, you know, and the first things that were being slated out were people's skin color and their nationality or their gender. But it was cool that they actually went to the depth of what makes us different, not just, you know, the surface level, but actually our socioeconomic issues or things that come up through that. Or, you know, did I gain wealth through X path, or or I am on the system through this Y path? Like, I think those are really speak to where people are actually at, which I'm really happy that they took that into account.
Yeah. And so the other thing that they did too is they looked at like how many people in the panel actually had a family doctor and how many didn't, because they didn't want to bias the results based on one or the other. So that if they were like, oh, everybody here has a family doctor, so obviously the system is working a little bit better for them, versus everybody not having a family doctor, so they're like, burn it all down, it's a mess kind of thing. So they tried to really kind of balance that. And it was just an incredible experience, because at the end of all this, we had 6 buckets of recommendations that really called on the provincial government, the Nova Scotia Health Authority, and others to really make substantive changes. And they were very succinct and very clear. So it wasn't just like, please fix healthcare, and you know what I mean? Or like, please make more doctors come here. It was like, okay, no, it's like, here's a problem in the fee-for-service model. This is where you fix it. Here's a problem with delivering a one patient, one record system when you're not including these groups. Like, this is how you fix this. Or one of the other things that I thought was really cool that might be more up your alley is thinking about the design of the way healthcare systems talk to each other. They don't talk to each other. I guess that's how they don't talk to each other. And so from a user design perspective, and from a business perspective, they're well designed for just the purpose that they have, servicing that physician as they're updating the record, but all that information is held in a silo. And so it doesn't make sense for TELUS, who owns one of the record systems, to talk to Shopper's system, because they don't want you to be able to choose one or the other. They want you to choose their platform. Mm-hmm. And so the United States actually does a really good job of legislating. It's called interoperability. So meaning that these systems have to talk to each other. They have to be able to connect to each other, and they have to be able to update each other's databases. And so, and that's something that was really cool that came out of the fact that one of our panelists in the group, she was actually an ex-healthcare worker in the States. And she's like, here's where the States is doing it well. Here's where they're doing it really badly. Why can't we take the things that they're doing well and bring it here? And so bringing that lens to it was really cool, because we crap on the States a lot for so many things, especially healthcare, because we like to be like, oh, look at us with our healthcare. And the States are like, yeah, well, you'll die in a waiting room up there. So, so it was really cool to kind of get that extra perspective of the United States system and our system, and how do you take the best of both worlds.
Definitely. What was the reaction of the room when this woman spoke up on behalf of the United States healthcare system? Really, really supportive. That was the thing that was kind of interesting, is that they did a really good job framing the fact. They were like, okay, everyone here is here for a common goal. We're here to make primary care better for Nova Scotians. All your other like political leanings or concerns aside, or what your background is, that will inform how you bring ideas to the table, right? But like, that's not the issue. We're not debating that. That's your stuff. What we're doing here is we're only focusing on how do we make primary care better. And every idea comes in the pot, and every idea is equally valued, weighed, and then tested. And if it's found that idea is not going to be sufficient, then we move that to the side. And we can either come back to that if it's found that there might be something that we want to take from that. If not, it's parked over there, and we don't look at it again. And it was just kind of that agreement that like common purpose, respect, and humility. And so kind of that idea that like no one is better than another person in this room. And we all know that there's varying levels of experience, intelligence. That was the other thing too, is that there were some people that it was very obvious that from some of their answers that like, that they weren't, as, I feel like it's a little bit mean, but like some people weren't as intelligent as others, but they still added really valuable contributions, because they were like, if you're speaking in a language that I don't understand, then how am I going to get access to this? And so that was super valuable to have as well. But yeah, it was just that understanding that even though your perspective, whether it be more like liberal leaning or conservative leaning or whatever, it's coming in here and it's going to have equal weight. There's not going to be some kind of agenda that's going to force people down and quiet them. That's good. That's glad to hear that. And so I know there's some big things that happened. There's a big guest that came into the room. I want to hear about this. Explain this a little bit more and like your time being able to kind of question.
Are you talking about Miss Maple?
Yes.
Yeah. So we had one of the representatives from the higher ups of Maple come in and speak to us. And what was really interesting is because they did a good job because they had the lady from...
And for context, what is Maple?
Oh, Maple is the online private healthcare that it's only accessible to people in Nova Scotia who are either paying for it privately or they're going to get it for free if you're on the Need a Family Doctor list. So that list is like 150,000 people long and growing of individuals who don't have a family doctor, so they can use the Maple platform to then look at, minor ailments. And so we got to have like some really good FaceTime with that Maple rep. And it was funny because you could definitely see that the Maple rep was like very clearly pushing their product. And they're like, we just think like for a better world, we should all have Maple. And it's like, well, of course you do, because that means more users, that means more money. Mm-hmm. And it was funny how it was like portrayed as being like so altruistic, and we're here because, we want to be here and this is a public good, and which like parts of it, they're not wrong. Like it's hard to argue like providing healthcare to people who don't have it. But it was just interesting because they had put her next to the person who was heading up the OPOR, so One Patient, One Record project, and then a researcher from Ontario whose entire research is based on like looking at public and private healthcare systems and the benefits and drawbacks to both. So you'd get the researcher who would come in and be like, yeah, here's what's crappy about private systems. And then the Maple rep would be like, I think that's really great. And I think it's really wonderful that we all have a chance to like really examine the differences between public and private. But here at Maple, we're about you.
I love it. Love it.
And so like, it was really funny because the way she spoke, her body language, the way she held herself, it was like, oh girl, you've been doing sales for a while. Like she was like, I was a nurse practitioner. It's like, yeah, you definitely were, but now you're a saleswoman. Like that's your job. So, but yeah, it was really interesting too, because like one of the things that came up was the fact that like Maple can't do like long-term healthcare planning because you're going in, you're seeing whoever's available right then and there, which makes it really fast, but it makes it very disjointed. And the other problem too is that was highlighted by the researcher actually was saying like some of your health data that's collected by a private entity can then be sold to like insurance companies or other actors who want to buy it. And you have to sign up and say yes to that if you want to use the platform. It's all in the fine print. And so there's not really a way to opt out of that. And so it's like there's this level of protection and security that is missing from some of our online virtual care systems that we have and from private providers. It's not there yet. And that's kind of worrisome. And it was like very interesting when that researcher brought it in and then you just watch the air leave the room like, ooh. And then that Maple rep she was trying hard. She was
scrambling.
Like, yeah. She was like, oh, Maple would never do that. We haven't done that in the past. But it was just very interesting because it's like, oh yes, but your documents say that you can. You have the legal right because we've signed saying that, yes, we're going to use your platform. So therefore this information is available. However, we're not going to do that. Don't worry. Just trust my voice.
Yeah. If we weren't planning on doing that, why would we have to put it in the fine print that we can? Like, why is it an option? It's a good question.
Yeah. Well, it's just like, we're not going to remove ourselves from the opportunity to do that. So even if they're not doing it and they've said that they aren't doing it at this moment, it's like, that's not precluding them from potentially doing it in the future.
Now, that's an interesting point though, obviously, because data privacy has become very important and a huge point of topic in the last 10 to 12 years. And actually I'd say even the last 10 years. Mm-hmm. And I think that's something that's really important when talking about not just even the private sector, where whatever they can do with your data, you're at their whim because they are the only game in town. But the second thing about that is the one patient, one record issue.
Mm-hmm.
People love the idea, myself included, of just having one spot, one database where multiple entities have access to that database with my information. So I don't have to carry around pieces of paper to verify what I have and what I don't have, what shot I got, what shot I didn't get, whatever it may be. But because of the stuff that we've been going through the past few years, people are very nervous about even the government having a sole access and the government deciding who gets access to that information across all these different entities.
Yeah, so that really kind of ties into two of our recommendations. So we had a whole recommendation theme just around data and sharing and privacy and protection. And we explicitly stated that we didn't want healthcare information or healthcare personal health data to be able to be accessed by anyone who is not in the direct line of care unless explicitly given permission by the individual. And then the other part of that was that we wrote out in the print, this being insurance companies. Because as we saw in the House of Commons, when the Senate put forward a bill to protect Canadians' personal genetic information. So if you did like a 23andMe or one of those genetic testing kits, that information actually can be collected by insurance companies and used against you. And so the House of Commons shot that down after being wined and dined by the insurance industry. And so that was something that we brought up, and we said, we cannot have that here. And what was very interesting was the reactions from those in power that were in the room when we read out our recommendations. They were just like, yeah, actually, that makes a lot of sense. We've seen that happening at a federal level. We don't want to repeat that at a provincial level. And that's one of the things too, is that healthcare in Canada is very much a provincial priority that's paid for by a federal purse. So that's where I actually feel a little more secure in that. However, that's saying, I know that Nova Scotia just had a data breach, which they're currently trying to clean up. So yeah, that was in our recommendations, was a call to protection, to better data security. I'm throwing those words all together here. And really looking at the ways that information is either shared, collected, or updated. And so it's going to be really cool when the full report comes out, just to see the fact that you had a room full of people who, a couple months ago did not have a lot of expertise in this area come forward with some very meaty and very comprehensive recommendations on these issues, just because of the amount of expertise that we were given from these speakers that they brought forward, which was really cool.
Nice. And so just again to clarify, the whole goal of this panel again was to improve healthcare in the province, but mainly virtual care was the key proponent. Is that correct?
No, it was primary care. So
Primary
as a
care,
part of that, that's virtual care. So since the pandemic, basically, primary care providers, your family docs and clinics and things like that are providing more and more services online and virtually. And then also now with the inclusion of private online virtual healthcare providers, virtual care was a huge part of it. And then the other thing was in rural parts of the province where you can't get access to a specialist or you can't get access to a family doc just because nobody's going to live in this town that's only 200 people large and the nearest hospital is, 2 hours away kind of thing. They need virtual care. That's going to be the solution for them. So that was why virtual care was such a big part of it. But it really was about how do we not focus solely on virtual care, but bring that in as another tool in the toolbox to be able to aid family doctors, basically.
That makes sense. So we're kind of talking about, big data, lots of sensitive information. How do we deal with that? How do we secure that? These are great questions to ask. This brings me to this next question, which is something we talked about offline that now we're going to bring into this arena. Is a price tag was thrown around at this event. And it was a price tag that you were kind of surprised by yourself. Throw me what the price was, and let's try to break this down and see if what makes sense.
Oh man, I did not do my homework and I did not pull up that number, but they didn't explicitly bring the number to the event. And I know that because if we did, there would have been a lot of
raised eyebrows,
a lot of like jaws hitting the floor. So we're talking in the multiple hundreds of millions of dollars with expected overages to, we're talking like 600 million plus, and as a total price tag
for one patient,
one record. And so what that means is that's going to be the price to incentivize use, the price to pay for the platform from Oracle, because that's who's developing it. It's the price for refining it, rebuilding it, basing it off of national standards for data and information entry in the healthcare field. And then it's also, I think I did say this already, but transition costs for all the hospitals and for all the individuals using the different platforms and retraining and basically a lot of the change management work that's going to happen. And that is happening at the moment. So looking at that number, I'm just like, oh my God. And so I could see like the amount of like man hours that's going to go into taking photocopied records and digitizing them in a way that you can actually search. Because that was the other thing too, is that they were saying, we like to say we have a digital system because we've, scanned something in as an image, but there's no way to find a keyword or do any kind of a search. You have to actually like flip through digital images like you would pages of a book. And they're like, that's not helping anybody. That's archaic. It's like, it's almost like blasphemous to to call it a digital system when you're using it like an analog one. So I can see where there's going to be a lot of costs in doing that. But yeah, for the platform itself though, I'm like, man, Oracle, you are making a mint off of this, because I think that you probably already got the skeleton of this platform because there's so many other provinces that are doing this previously and right now. Especially they keep bringing up the example of BC that's done a couple systems like this. Mm-hmm. So yeah, just to kind of like look at that and go, oh my God, like that's how much it's going to cost. That was kind of crazy.
Is it this Oracle we're talking about?
Yes.
Like the Oracle.
Like Oracle.
Like Oracle Arena, Golden State Warriors, Oracle from California. Got it.
Yeah.
They're the ones who are essentially building the
third largest software company. Look at that.
Yeah, seriously. Interesting how that works out. Eh? So they're looking at building the data behind it and building the infrastructure behind this product.
Yeah, building the architecture and creating the actual platforms to be able to be used by individuals. And I'm assuming they're probably going to do some of the training. That hasn't been explicitly stated, but to me, it would make sense. I mean, we use the Cerner product in the hospital when I was working there, and part of that was training as well.
Right. Okay. So that makes I hear it. I see where it's coming from. So from a designer perspective, those who know, I am a user experience designer. I work with developers. I understand how big systems can be built and maintained to a degree. From a design perspective, a really healthy budget for design and user experience research and all that type of stuff. You're looking at a healthy budget. It's about $250,000, $250,000. We'll do the trick for you. You'll get all your research in, whatever you need. And then as well, I'll pay for, your wireframes. I'll pay for your flow diagrams, information architecture, how it all is going to work. And then we'll build out the screens and handing it off to engineering to be developed. The big thing behind this is, don't get me wrong. When you're dealing with a lot of data, you're going to be dealing with information storage, which doesn't come cheap these days. So you're going to have to pay for those servers. You're going to have to pay for all the engineers that are going to be building this thing out. But I think that is like kind of the big price tag when it comes to all this, is what you said, is it's going to come down to storage is where the big monies are coming in. The thing I'm interested in, trying to figure out where the heads are at with it, is when we're talking about $600 million, as I said, a healthy UX budget is like $250,000 for something like this. I'll give it. We'll make sure we're 4x for our profits. $1 million for design.
Mm-hmm.
I would say usually it's healthy to kind of go off the rule of thumb of 7 to 8 times the design budget is what your development budget will be. So for conservative estimates, that's $10 million. So we're dealing with $11 million to build a big platform.
Mm-hmm.
I'll give you $100 million for storage solutions. $100 million. Crazy. That's a stupid number. It shouldn't be that much, but I'll give you the benefit of the doubt.
Another 20 for cybersecurity services.
Yeah. Like, these are the type of line items we're talking about. I just do not see, especially, I get this comes down to the security issue. But say, okay, you photocopy all the paper records. That does take a lot of time, don't get me wrong. But you get those paper records in, and then people are just like, okay, you got to manually, put the numbers in. There's technology for that. You don't have to have someone manually punching those numbers in.
Mm-hmm.
Like there's technology that can literally scan. Like our phones do it on iOS. Like you can copy and paste text from an image onto your phone. Like that works. That happens. And there's more sophisticated services that can do that for you. So that's where I'm like, man, when I hear 600 million, I think of the COVID app all over again.
Yeah, well, that's what I said when we were talking about this offline, was this idea of like, look at ArriveCan and like the scandal that came out of that when you had all these tech companies being like, you paid what? And so like, we know that these government contracts are big money, and that's why corporations are just like chomping at the bit to get them, because they're big money. And so I think what I would want to see is some kind of transparency in the government in why they went with that provider, and then transparency on the side of the provider being like, how did they, value this service at that amount? Like, where did that number come from?
Yeah, give me the breakdown. Exactly how that makes sense. And like, I would love to see I know there was probably a system that went through of like, how they evaluated all of the contracts, or, why am I spacing the word for it?
Like pure procurement?
Yeah, the procurement process.
Yeah.
Obviously, I'm curious of how that went, because you had to give some type of specific breakdown of what you were going to provide and how much it was going to cost. Love to see what that document looks like coming out of Oracle.
Yeah, for sure. And especially, I wonder too how much of it is just like, okay, we know Newfoundland has a one patient one record system. We know that BC does. We know that Ontario is working on it. They have like pockets of it in different areas. So like the University Health Network in Toronto has its own. Part of the northern part of Ontario has its own. And so I wonder if just by virtue of these other provinces paying through the nose for some of these services, I wonder if that was part of the decision-making progress, where they're like, oh, okay, this is what everybody's just paying. Like, this is just the reality of it. And so
it's like buying a house in Canada. Guess everyone's paying this. Makes sense. We should pay up too.
Yeah, exactly. Right. And if every company is offering at that level and at that price point, then it's pretty hard to argue it down, I think, because they kind of have this over a barrel too, where it's like, they know we need this. They know that this is a pain point, and our government is saying this is a pain point, we're going to fix it. And so they need a solution too that happens within the 4-year election cycle that they're in. So it's kind of like, I guess we're paying it.
Yeah. Well, logistically, I would be interested in the idea of having one patient, one record on blockchain technology. That would be very interesting to me. Giving the individual the power to decide who actually accesses their records versus a third-party service. Giving you a sign-in to dictate who you share it with or who you don't share it with.
So what's cool right now is that when you have, because the hospitals themselves have their own record systems, right? You can actually request a detailed, itemized list of who has accessed your record, what they have accessed, and when they've accessed it. And people have done that and actually sued the hospital for mismanagement, and because like that's something that is not allowed, like in our health acts and confidentiality rules. So I think an example was like one person thought that their neighbor might be cheating, and so they looked up their microbiology information to see if there's like any like STD testing that happened. Like, you know what I mean? Like just ridiculous things that went down, or people who are like, oh, I know this person went to the hospital on the other day. I wonder what they're up to. And it's just like nosiness. And those people got fired like real fast. Like it was flagged, found out, they were gone the next day kind of thing. So there are things in place like that are working and have worked. And it's funny because it's one of those things too, like even as a worker in the healthcare system, you're not allowed to look up your own stuff, which like I always thought was ridiculous, because I'm like, it's my information. Why am I not allowed to access it? But if you don't access it through the proper channels, like you can get fired for that kind of thing. So I don't think that I'm as worried about that, because I think that that's something that's going to be baked in. It's just like being able to see who is accessing, why they're accessing, when they're accessing, and then having a process to actually question that too, because there is one in existence right now.
Yeah, well, I guess that's my concern though, right? Is sure, like that process is involved right now, and that's local to the hospital itself. But the issue then comes to now we're dealing with technology, and you can easily fudge people who are accessing your files. But also when you have a company that is not based here, who's managing all that information, red flags go up. And that is a concern.
Yeah. And I think that's something that needs more clarity, is like, how much are they managing? Right. It's because I know that the idea is that this is something that is going to belong to Nova Scotians. So it's like, okay, like how much are you actively managing the system? Are you creating it, providing storage and keeping it for us, and then providing updates, as we ask for them? Or is this something completely out of our hands? And so we do have like health informatics professionals and people who work in that. So I would think that we would have a little more control than not, but it's not clearly defined. And so that would be something that would be interesting to know.
Absolutely. Couldn't agree more. Before we move on to the next topic, do you have any last words that you want to mention before we move on?
Just honestly, the experience was incredible. And I never say that about public consultations or anything to do with like having your input into government. Honestly, like a lot of times they're just awful. They're the worst. And I've been engaged in these spheres for a long time. And this was the first one where I was just like, wow, I'm coming out of this, because we had to spend our whole weekends. We spent Friday, Saturday, Sunday. We had given up weekends previous to this for virtual sessions. And then we had an in-person session, like 3 days. And they were the three most beautiful days in the summer. So I'm going to this hotel conference room, and then down to Pier 21. And I'm looking at the weather, and I'm like, it's 28 degrees, sunny, feels like 36. And it's like, I want to be on a beach. I want to be in a lake. I do not want to be in this room. But the structure and the content and the purpose was so compelling that it was enough because I remember on the Sunday, I was just like, okay, I can skip out early and just, sneak out the back and be like, oh, I have an issue that I need to take care of. And like, that was my plan going in, because I was just like, I've been here all weekend. I'm tired. My body is tired. I'm just gonna sneak out early. And you don't, because it was just so interesting. And the way that they did it was so well facilitated. And then just the energy of the people that you're working with, and the energy of the people listening, from government and from these organizations that have a lot of power, a lot of decision-making power. The fact that they showed up and were there was something that I thought was incredible. The one thing I will say is that we didn't have members of the political parties come, and they were invited. So we did have the Department of Health and Wellness, which is, government, but they're more your bureaucratic government, right? They're the people who are fixed depending on who comes in, who doesn't come in. And we did have like Dalmed. We had like we had everybody there that you would expect, except for people from the governing parties or the opposition party. So it was very interesting that we didn't see our political people there. So that's something that I was kind of like, So we actually created a recommendation that called them to respond within the next 6 months, to read the report and to respond within 6 months time frame of it being released. And so directly called out the Tim Houston government, the Zach Churchill opposition, and then the Department of Health and Wellness to respond. So we'll see what happens.
Yeah, I'd be curious to see what happens out of that. Interesting omission or absence, I should say.
Yeah, exactly right.
Fair enough. Cool. Well, we'll jump right on into it here. So, federal things that are happening.
Oh yeah. Speaking of absent government, right?
Oh, he went there. So Justin Trudeau paid a visit to Alberta, and he's having a good old time over there.
Oh, before we begin, I just want to comment on the fact that wherever Justin goes, he always makes sure he looks the part. Oh, whether he's going to India and is dressing in traditional wedding garb, and now him going to talk to Premier Smith in a plaid button down, and then like the blue jeans, like I'm a working man.
The drama that's coming out of this province has been absolutely comical to me, and watching it kind of unravel on Twitter and TikTok has been hilarious. So obviously it was like counter programming is how it looked to me. You had Trudeau was there, and then Poilievre showed up. They're in different parts of the Stampede, but they're there. They're different parts of Calgary, but they're there. You have Trudeau trying to flip pancakes, but obviously he hasn't done that very often in his life. And then you got Poilievre, who's flipping flapjacks and landing it, which was kind of funny to watch as well. And the funniest part about both of those actions is people putting so much stake in both those things happening. So the fact that Trudeau couldn't flip a pancake for his life and splattering it all over the friggin' grill, hilarious. The fact that people are praising Poilievre, like, he landed the flapjack flip. This guy's the second coming of Jesus, amen. It's wild to me. People so badly want a team to cheer on.
They do.
And it's nauseating to me. However, this trip isn't without at least some degree of maybe a little bit of a sprout of a fruit, where Justin Trudeau sat down Danielle Smith, the Premier of Alberta.
I know, which I can't believe he did. Like, I know he had to, but the fact that he did it publicly, I mean, that's interesting. And yeah, the pancakes, the pancakes killed me, right? Because I was just like, oh man, it's very obvious you've had a personal chef your entire life that and then Poilievre, it's like, man, did you practice this like before doing this? Did you have a personal chef teach you?
Yeah.
Yeah, exactly. So it's like, I get where people are like putting a lot of stock into the pancake thing, but I do get it. But at the same time, it's a freaking pancake. If you're a good leader, I don't care if you can flip a pancake or not. Like, that is not a job requirement to lead this country. But what is being able to connect to people, and you're doing a bad job.
Yeah. Well, like, there was one line from Poilievre that cracked me up. And he was talking about, he's like, when I was younger, I worked a job at the Stampede, taking out trash and cleaning things up, which means I'm the man for the job to take after over Trudeau. I was like, okay, that was good. That was a good line. I'm not gonna lie. But I do want to get into this meeting with Danielle Smith and Trudeau coming together for a chat with the media, and they're still very far apart on issues. But they're slowly coming together.
Oh, good.
At least Danielle will tell you.
Yeah.
Danny Smith, baby. She's coming in.
Nice to see you.
Oh, nice to see you. Got some pleasantries. She's professional,
Well, thank you all for
and
being
he
here
looks
today.
like
I'd
a
like to thank
homeless
the
farmer.
Minister for taking some time to chat with me before I'm sure a very busy Stampede schedule. I hope you enjoy it.
We're all busy at Stampede.
No kidding. But of course, we do have some serious things that we need to discuss. I had sent a letter to the Prime Minister saying that we'd like to bring our emissions reduction and energy development plan with a target of carbon neutrality by 2050 in alignment with some of the objectives of the federal government. And that will require us to have some conversations about 3 areas that I don't think we have agreement on yet, but I hope to. We would like to establish a working group so that we could talk about how we might be able to achieve a net zero power grid, but I've indicated to the Prime Minister that that is not possible by 2035, which is the federal target. We've been told that by our experts here. We also know that an emissions cap or emissions reduction, such as the one that's been proposed, of 42% by 2030 would also result in essentially a production cap, which we don't think is realistic or feasible as well. And we know that the government had negotiated Article 6 into the Paris Climate Accord, which should allow for us to get a credit here for reducing emissions abroad. And we would like to be able to work with our partner in British Columbia and the government in order to be able to reduce emissions and get credit here through LNG export. And of course, I've also given him a letter to take away on our request that Parliament be recalled so that we can put an end to the port strike in BC, which is causing extreme hardship to our producers and our exporters here. Minister.
Well, thank you very much, Premier Smith. It's great to see you again. Great to be here at Stampede, a great opportunity to celebrate this extraordinarily vibrant city and the best of Western pride and heritage and culture. It's really a great moment to be here where the country descends on Calgary. It's been a lot of fun already. I want to start by, of course, recognizing there's still thousands of people who've been evacuated from their homes across Alberta. The Premier and I have been working on responding over the past weeks and months to this wildfire situation, and we'll continue to be there as necessary as first responders and firefighters from around the world are helping out here in communities. I'm glad to be sitting down to speak with the Premier about how we create great jobs and grow the Alberta economy, because that's of tremendous benefit not just to people here in Alberta, not just to the country's economy as well, although it is significantly, but also in generating solutions for the world. Alberta has long been an extraordinarily innovative leader in providing energy to the continent and indeed the world, and the kinds of innovations, whether it's around hydrogen, whether it's around chemicals, whether it's around a range of things, solar, renewables, all sorts of really, really exciting things going on here in Alberta that we're extremely supportive of and looking forward to working together. You've highlighted one of the
Wild.
Barf.
That was, he hit all the buzzwords, luckily. Mm-hmm. We love that. So we'll take oh man, I think that was, I sensed the difference. I felt the shift just watching that 3-minute clip right there. Yeah, Danielle, who's kind of hitting the points that we all want to hear about these, these different targets and how her conservative government is going to try and work with that liberal federal government because we know they're very far apart on these issues. But then he just comes out with all the buzzwords of this, hydrogen, this, we're going to work with the global economy on that. And I'm like, bro, like what of substantiveness are you giving us here? I didn't hear much.
No, and that's the thing, right? Is like, and I know you screamed out globalism, but like, that's the one little thing where I'm just like, yeah, but if you're polluting, you're affecting the world. Like, it doesn't just like stay within the borders of Alberta. And I think that's what's happening too with BC, where they're like, hey, if your crap blows up, like it's running all through BC. Like, you know, great for you guys for being the producers, but we have to bear the burden of responsibility when things go wrong, which is fair. But yeah, to speak again to just his performance, because that's what I'm calling them now. They're just different performances. Like you've got the costume, you've got the script. It's all performance, and
he's having a hard time remembering clearly. But.
What was that line that I need to say? Somebody get the cane and pull him off the stage, please.
True.
But yeah, so it's just, you watch it and you're just like, that was, we clipped at 3 minutes and 20 seconds there. And we probably had a good like minute and a half of Danielle, opening up, introducing the issues that we need to talk about. And then the other minute and a half or minute 50 of Trudeau just like, isn't it wonderful to be in Calgary, the center of Western excellence, and blah, 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 blah. My dad Fidel would be so proud of everything you've done here. And
Yeah. You're a bad man for that one, bro. You're a bad man for that one. There was the other thing, kind of the hot topic this week too, is the grocery rebate that came out.
oh yeah,
People were real fired up about that one, and the fact it was helping out 11 million Canadians who make less than $40,000 a year.
you must have saw that TikTok too. Then
The Rabba Foods one, because that's what I'm going after.
go for it.
So Chrystia Freeland, our finance minister, wanted to make sure she was feeling like she was one with the people, and did a whole press conference at Rabba Foods, which is a grocery store in Ontario. And she gets up there. She's got the beautiful backdrop. She's standing in front of a rack of fruits, and she's talking about how awesome it is that we're giving money back to families who need money for groceries, people who need money for groceries. And then you look at one small detail on the background behind her. All the food behind her had their price tags taken from them. That was interesting. I was like, whoa, cool. So inflation's apparently not an issue, but we're going to give you money to help battle inflation. And we're so embarrassed by what's happening that we're going to take off the prices of the food in the grocery store.
Well, they take away from the whole design, the air that we're going for. It's just, it's bad feng shui.
Yeah. We got to get that whole just beautiful painting together. Yeah.
We want this to look like a cornucopia from Thanksgiving, not a very fancy like pizza critique aisle that that you could never afford.
Totally. It kind of gives me the same type of vibes of, we murdered all the indigenous people, but we just brought them food and we made up and had dinner together and we call it Thanksgiving. That's the type of vibe that that one gave me. We're just gonna call it something else and run with it. So it was interesting.
Yeah. So the one that I watched that I thought was really good was they actually did like a breakdown of the legislation and then kind of said, okay, Trudeau said that it was 11 million Canadians are going to be able to access this. And so she said, that is a tragedy, not a win, that 11 million Canadians are accessing this. And she said, here's why. And so she was looking at the fact that, after taxes, your take home would probably be somewhere, I think it was between 24 and 28,000. She said, who in this country can live off of $24,000 to $28,000 a year? I can't. And she said, to basically qualify, only one person in the household would be able to be working, and they would only be able to be working a minimum wage job. Like, nowhere does that exist. But apparently 11 million Canadians, that's how they're living. Like, that's a tragedy. The fact that, there's that many people living below the poverty line is what I would call it. Below like standards of living where you can actually put money away for retirement or for an unexpected like sick or emergency incident coming forward. Like it's just mind boggling when you look at that and you say 11 million people, basically 1 in 4 Canadians are able to access this, and at its maximum $600 rebate. I mean, I don't know if you've been to Costco lately, but $600, that's like 3 trips, if you're doing well.
Yeah, true.
So I just thought, yeah, that's the real story behind the story. It's the fact that we should not have this many people accessing it. It's the same thing what happened when Feed Nova Scotia came forward and said, we don't want your money to fund the food bank because our job is to put ourselves out of business. We shouldn't be seeing more users of the food bank. We should be seeing less. So therefore we should be reducing our budgets, not increasing them, because the social determinants of health and food insecurity and all these aspects that make up what a well-lived life is in Canada are not there. And that's where you need to be funding. And that's the work that needs to be done. And it's not. It's all these lovely placations and Band-Aid solutions that are just getting old.
Yeah. Couldn't agree more, man. And this comes back down to a point we talked about before the show, with how people's fear is outweighing their hatred or dismay for Trudeau, which that is that's been something that's been very interesting for me to see play out, where they don't want any other option other than Trudeau if it means they get something that they fear, which in this case they are terrified of Pierre Poilievre.
Yeah.
So.
And so I think that's where I would bring it back to, okay, bringing the big perspective locally. I'd say, what is your own fear that you have, that you've heard? And then doing some really heavy digging into that and try and find the opposite opinion. Actively seek out the opposite opinion, because if you start looking in your own echo chambers, I'd say, because social media and traditional media are doing that. They're producing content that's directed to what they think that you want to hear and that they think will confirm your own opinions. So seek out the opposite opinion on purpose and try and do that with like respectful curiosity, because that's what's going to get you a little bit closer to the truth. Because if we take either too far right or too far left, like we're missing half the story. And I think especially in the case of Pierre Poilievre, like he's a politician. Like he's definitely in it for whatever his own personal motivations and whatever money kickbacks he's going to get from companies that he's going to placate to. Like we know that. That's something that, we're just going to have to live with. But it's like, do we take the chance on something that's going to be changing our lives, especially when he's made it very clear that he wants to repel the carbon tax, which I don't know if you've paid for gas recently, but that's killing me. So
especially moving out to Hubli.
Hubli. No, you're saying it wrong.
I'm just gonna keep taking you off.
No, I'm trying to help you out, bro.
Screw that, bro.
Oh my God. Anyway, but yeah, basically seek out the opposite opinion, because I think that's going to get you closer to where the truth is. And then when you're having conversations with people that you love and friends and people, like challenge them to do the same, because that's the only way that we're going to get a little more informed. Because right now you can't trust traditional media sources because they are bought and paid for, as we've seen, by the current government that's in power. So you have to seek out non-traditional media sources and then also seek out opinions that are different than your own. And then if you still come forward with like, yeah, I still want to vote the way they want to vote, at least I can respect that and being like, you know what, you looked at the things, you evaluated however you wanted to, and that's what the way you came to it. Cool. Like I can respect that. But if you are coming being like, well, CBC said, Pierre is going to eat children. It's like, okay, well, we know that's Trudeau's media. So, what are the other things that are being said right now? Like what is Trudeau, what is Poilievre saying about carbon tax? What are they saying on housing affordability, food insecurity? What are they saying on these topics? Are they saying anything at all? And then what is being done and what has happened? So when you look at the fact that our government just spent how many millions on relief to a foreign country when our country right now is in crisis, either through food or energy or fire. When you look at the fact that they gave how many X millions of dollars to create electric car batteries. It's like, that is the job of private industry. We should not be paying for that out of our tax dollars. So these are the kind of things that we need to look for, keep in our mind when we go to cast a ballot, or when we're actually having these conversations with friends and family, and pull that fear out of it and really kind of have this compassionate, respectful conversation about, when I think about my life, my community, my neighbors, and what is actually impacting me from that federal level. What are the things that are concerning, and what are the things that we need to talk about? And then if you're like, you know what, I've heard that this is an issue that's coming up. So for instance, because I have a lot of friends in the gay community, like they're really super concerned about gay rights being taken away. So it's like, okay, let's seek out information around, okay, what has the Liberal Party said? What has the Conservative Party said about gay rights? And if they get into power, what are they going to do, kind of thing. And so, and then take that information and move forward from that. And so, and then the last thing is going to be, there are going to be trade-offs. No candidate is going to fit your perfect bill because they all kind of suck. So you just have to sit there and go, okay, what crap am I willing to take, and what crap is going to, not disproportionately disenfranchise and hurt people the most? Because some of the stuff that this government, who's all peace, love, and friendship, that they put out there, is disproportionately hurting communities of color, Indigenous people, and people who are impoverished or in low socioeconomic statuses more than anyone else, i.e. the carbon tax. And they've said that from their own government, and just, they don't care. So that's where I'd say, like, be critical, be looking for the opposite opinion, and then come up with your own.
Yep, I'd agree with that. And some messaging that's been coming out, I thought, has been the next kind of shot to the bow of the Conservative Party. Is the Liberals keep preaching, and they're running paid ads on this as well, is the fact that Pierre Poilievre has not given out a climate plan like we have. Where's his climate plan? He doesn't care about the environment. That's been kind of the messaging. And it's interesting because people are now starting to flip that back on the Liberals, but like, hey, but what's your plan? Because your plan is just tax people, and you haven't told us what you're actually trying to do. You're saying you're trying to hit these targets that we all know that came from Davos, the targets we're looking at. And your plan is to hit those targets, is to tax us more and more and more until we hit those targets. That's the plan that you have. That's not really a climate plan. That's more of a, let's just make people really miserable and hope that reduces their use of these traditional vehicles that kind of have made our economy go. And that's the plan. Like, there's just been no proactiveness in their approach. Even if they want to go carbon tax route, where's that money going? Like, where's the transparency of where that money is going? How are we actually, like, really kind of, greening our grid per se? How are we kind of creating a better, just a greener economy in that way? And where's that money going? Yeah.
And what's really perverse is the fact that they would probably say, well, we've just spent all this money on creating battery production within Canada. So that's a green initiative.
Right.
And it's like, what? So you're looking at carbon tax, then dollars in, their own words, going to a private corporate entity. And it's like, no, that is just like I said, the most perverse way to tackle anything climate.
Right.
Is to then put it in the hands of people who've actively, destroyed the climate for their own capitalistic goals. And not saying that, like, there's anything wrong with pursuing your own, financial freedom, but at the same time, it's like, if it's coming at the expense of others, and then everyone is being, taxed, and then you're given that money again, like,
true,
like that to me that's just beyond. So
yeah, I don't blame you for it, dude. It's we'll keep an eye on it and move forward here and see where these things progress, because we still got 2 more years.
I know.
Woo!
Yeah.
For the next election, so I'm sure it'll continue to spice up as we get closer and closer.
But yeah, just to touch back on the panel though, like, there are things like this happening all the time. You need to keep your ear to the ground and find out when they're happening. Connect with those people that are working on things. Because I've lost faith in our federal government, but I really think that this past weekend was like a pretty, like, faith in humanity restoring event for me. I felt very hopeful after it, and I think that it just goes to show that, like, these things have to come from the bottom up, and the bottom being us, the community. So I think, find your fire in whatever topic it might be, and go forward with that, and tell us about it too. Because I think that's something that we want to hear from. I know that we had made mention before about shopping locally, and that's something that I'm trying to do right now. I know that Costco has a whole bunch of strawberries that we're brought in from, I think it was a First Nation community here in Nova Scotia, actually. So it's a company there. So go get your local Nova Scotia strawberries. But something else that we're going to do is try and get farmers markets of Nova Scotia to give us a chat and maybe some words on and how you can do that better too.
Absolutely. Yeah, those are things we're definitely looking into, we're looking forward to. And we, as you said, grassroots initiatives are super key, and keeping an eye on your local politicians. That's where the impact happens. I think is super important, and that's what we'll keep doing moving forward. So awesome. It was great chat tonight, Reg. It's been a pleasure.
Well, it's good. I'm just glad to be back in the seat again. We needed that little break, but glad to be back with all the full force of our energy and enthusiasm.
Absolutely. I hear you on that, brother. So whatever it is you're doing, whether you be trying to pick some strawberries.
Oh, man, you took that one.
Yeah.
Or participating in a panel on healthcare.
Or just fighting the good fight. Whatever it is you're doing, wherever you are, we love you. We're out. Peace.